They say some people are born survivors. I used to think that was just something people told themselves to feel better about their terrible choices. Then I became one. My name is Abigail Chen, and this is the story of how I walked into the most impossible job in New York City with coffee-stained credentials and zero survival instincts, and somehow became the only person who could handle the man everyone else called the executioner. But let me start where it gets interesting. Picture this, me, standing in front of Manhattan's most ruthless CEO, holding a file folder I've just accidentally set on fire with a decorative candle I didn't know was lit. His face, carved from ice and expensive genetics, transitioning from shock to fury to something that looks suspiciously like amusement? That's where my story peaks. But to understand how a walking disaster became indispensable to a man who fires people for breathing wrong, you need to know where I started. And trust me, it wasn't pretty. The beginning, when family breaks you 5 years ago, I learned that blood doesn't guarantee love. Sometimes it just guarantees attendance at the moments that destroy you. It was supposed to be my triumph. Columbia University, bachelor's in business administration, magna cum laude despite working 3 jobs to afford it. I'd bought a dress from a thrift store that looked almost new under the right lighting, practiced my walk across the stage until my roommate threatened to move out, and sent my parents an invitation with a handwritten note. I did it. I hope this makes you proud. They came. That was the cruel part, they actually showed up. My mother sat in the audience in her designer suit, the one she wore to her real estate closings. My father checked his phone every 4 minutes, timing it like he had somewhere more important to be. Which, of course, he did. He always did. When they called my name, Abigail Marie Chen, magna cum laude, I walked across that stage with my heart in my throat, searching the crowd for their faces, desperate for approval, for recognition, for anything that said I mattered. My mother was texting. My father had his eyes closed, possibly sleeping. The reception afterward was worse. I found them by the refreshment table, my mother examining a cookie like it had personally offended her, my father talking business with someone else's parent. Mom. Dad. My voice was too bright, too desperate. Did you see? Magna cum laude. Top 15% of my class. My mother glanced at me, her expression neutral. That's nice, dear. Did you know the Wang's daughter graduated summa cum laude from Harvard? They were just telling us about her job offer at Goldman Sachs. The words hit like a physical blow. I have a job lined up too. Junior analyst position at Junior. My father finally looked at me, his tone dismissive. Abigail, we paid for 4 years of education so you could be a junior analyst? Your brother was running his own division by 25. I'm 23. And I paid for most of it myself with loans and, exactly. My mother's voice was sharp. Loans. Debt. We offered to pay if you'd gone to a practical school, studied something useful. But no, you had to prove something, had to do it your way. And now you're graduating with debt and a junior position. Congratulations on your independence. The word independence sounded like a curse in her mouth. Why did you even come? The question escaped before I could stop it. If you think this is worthless, if you think I'm a failure, why did you bother showing up? My father's laugh was cold. Because family shows up, Abigail. Even when it's inconvenient. Even when we're disappointed. That's what adults do. They left 10 minutes later. Didn't stay for photos, didn't meet my professors, didn't see the award I received for my thesis on organizational behavior. Just left. I stood in that reception hall, surrounded by families celebrating, by parents crying with pride, by siblings taking group photos, and I felt something inside me shatter and reform into something harder, sharper. That night, I made a decision. If my family thought I was a failure, I'd prove them catastrophically wrong. Not for them, they'd lost that privilege. For me. For every daughter who'd been measured against impossible standards and found wanting. But first, I had to survive. And survival, I'd learn, required becoming someone I barely recognized. Chapter 1, The Impossible Boss. The executive suite of Mercer and Klein occupied the entire 67th floor of the Chrysler Building, all Art Deco elegance and modern terror. I'd been working there for exactly 48 hours when I learned about Alexander Mercer's reputation. "He's fired 6 assistants this month," the woman from HR whispered during my orientation. Her name was Patricia, and she had the exhausted look of someone who'd stopped being surprised by workplace carnage. "The longest anyone's lasted is 3 days. What happened to them?" I asked, clutching my employee handbook like a shield. "Various crimes. One answered the phone on the 4th ring instead of the 3rd. One brought him coffee at 8:02 instead of 8 o'clock. One, and this is my favorite, sneezed during a board meeting. That's insane. That's Alexander Mercer." Patricia's smile was grim. "He's brilliant, ruthless, and has the emotional range of a calculator. The company makes $800 million a year under his leadership, so the board doesn't care that he treats assistants like disposable tissues." "Then why am I here?" "Because someone has to be. And you came highly recommended by." She checked her notes, Professor Linda Morrison from Columbia's business school. "She said you were the most organizationally resilient student she'd ever taught." Whatever that means. It meant I'd once turned in a 20-page thesis while simultaneously planning my roommate's wedding, working 2 jobs, and recovering from food poisoning. Professor Morrison had found me typing in a bathroom stall and decided I was either insane or indestructible. Probably both. "Mr. Mercer will meet with you at exactly 9 a.m., Patricia continued. "Not 8:59. Not 9:01. Exactly 9 o'clock. His schedule is on the shared calendar. Memorize it. Live it. Never, ever deviate from it. Got it. Precision, punctuality, perfection. And one more thing." Patricia's voice dropped. "Don't take it personally when he fires you. Everyone gets fired. You're just delaying the inevitable." I should have run. Should have grabbed my coat and fled back to my tiny apartment and my stack of rejection letters from every other company that thought I wasn't good enough. But I'd spent 5 years proving I was stronger than other people's expectations. What was one more impossible man? At exactly 8:57 a.m., I stood outside Alexander Mercer's office, smoothing my thrift store blazer and practicing my confident smile in the reflection of a chrome sculpture that probably cost more than my entire education. At 8:59 and 30 seconds, the door opened. Alexander Mercer looked exactly like his reputation, tall, dark-haired, wearing a suit that was probably woven from the tears of failed competitors. His face was striking, sharp cheekbones, intense gray eyes, the kind of symmetry that made you forget to breathe, but it was his expression that stopped people cold. Absolute, unshakable control. "You're early," he said. Not a greeting. An observation. "Better early than late, Mr. Mercer. Early disrupts the schedule just as much as late. Early suggests anxiety, overeagerness, a lack of confidence in your timing." His eyes swept over me, cataloging flaws. "You'll learn or you won't last." "Understood, sir." "Come in." "Close the door." "Sit." I obeyed, sinking into a leather chair that was probably worth more than my car. The office was stunning, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Manhattan, minimalist furniture, and a single decorative element, a vintage brass compass on his desk, polished to perfection. "Abigail Chen," he said, reading from a file. "Columbia, magna cum laude, business administration with a focus on organizational behavior. You worked 3 jobs during school, maintained a 3.8 GPA, and wrote a thesis on high-stress decision-making in corporate environments that Professor Morrison described as disturbingly perceptive." "Thank you, sir." That wasn't a compliment. Disturbing means unsettling. It means you see things most people miss, which can be valuable or dangerous depending on what you do with that observation. He closed the file. Your predecessor lasted 37 hours before I fired her for using Comic Sans in an internal memo. How long do you think you'll last, Miss Chen? The question was a trap. Say too long, sound arrogant. Say too short, sound defeatist. So I said the only thing that felt honest. As long as I'm useful, sir. Not a moment longer. Something flickered in his eyes. Useful. Define that. Useful means I make your life easier, not harder. I anticipate needs before you voice them. I fix problems before they become your problems. I'm invisible when you need efficiency and present when you need support. I held his gaze. Useful means you forget I'm here until the moment something would go wrong without me. Alexander Mercer leaned back in his chair, studying me. That's either the smartest thing I've heard all week or you're setting yourself up for spectacular failure. Only one way to find out, sir. Indeed. He pulled a thick folder from his desk drawer. These are contracts that need to be reviewed, organized by priority, and cross-referenced with our client database. I need a summary of each on my desk by noon. 4 hours. Go. I took the folder, it had to be 300 pages, and stood. Anything else, sir? Yes. Coffee. Black, exactly 180 degrees, in a ceramic cup, not paper. I'll want it in 90 minutes. Don't be early. Don't be late. I nodded and left, my heart racing. 4 hours to do 8 hours of work, plus precise coffee delivery. This was the test. The impossible standard designed to break me. But I'd been breaking and reforming myself for 5 years. What was one more impossibility? I spread the contracts across my new desk, a beautiful workspace that would probably belong to someone else by tomorrow, and got to work. Chapter 2, The Fire Incident. Here's the thing about me, I'm brilliant at systems, terrible at spatial awareness. My brain can process complex organizational structures while simultaneously forgetting that physical objects exist in three-dimensional space. Which is how, at exactly 10:27 a.m., I managed to set a file folder on fire. I'd been so focused on the contracts, cross-referencing client names with database entries, that I didn't notice the decorative candle burning on the corner of my desk. Who puts decorative candles in an office? Apparently Alexander Mercer, who appreciated aesthetic precision even in his torture chambers. I reached for my notes, my sleeve brushed the folder landed on the candle, and suddenly I was starring in a workplace safety video titled "What Not to Do, Ever." Oh no. No, no, no. I grabbed the flaming folder, realized that was a terrible idea, dropped it, watched it land on my keyboard, grabbed it again with both hands this time, ran to the water cooler, dunked it, created a small tsunami across the floor, and turned around to find Alexander Mercer standing in his doorway. Watching. Not helping. Just watching with an expression I couldn't read. Miss Chen, he said calmly. Is there a reason you're flooding my executive suite? There was a fire. On the folder. From the candle. Which I didn't see. Because I was focused on the contracts. Which I've almost finished, by the way. Well, not the one that's currently underwater, but the others are. You set my contracts on fire. Technically, your decorative candle set them on fire. I just facilitated the introduction. His eyebrow raised. Just one. It was more terrifying than shouting. You're blaming my candle? I'm blaming spatial awareness challenges and possibly insufficient workplace safety training. My mouth was operating independently of my brain now, which was never good. Also, who puts lit candles in an office? That's a fire code violation waiting to happen. I should report you to OSHA. The silence that followed was deafening. Patricia appeared, drawn by the commotion. She took one look at the soggy folder, the puddle, my horrified face, and Alexander's unreadable expression, and immediately started backing away. I'll get maintenance, she whispered. Wait, I started, but she was already gone, clearly unwilling to witness my execution. Alexander stepped closer, examining the damage. Up close, I could see he was younger than I'd thought, maybe early 30s, and his eyes weren't just gray but silver, like a storm about to break. In 48 hours, he said quietly, you've managed to create a fire hazard, violate multiple office protocols, insult my aesthetic choices, and threaten to report me to federal authorities. When you list it like that, it sounds bad. It is bad, Miss Chen. But, I grabbed the intact folders from my desk, thrust them at him. But I finished. All 273 contracts, organized by priority, cross-referenced with client accounts, summarized with key terms and renewal dates highlighted. The one that's currently drowning was the Yoshida account, which I'd already summarized before it became a fire victim. The summary is in your email. I sent it at 10:15. He took the folders, flipped through them. His expression remained neutral, but I saw his eyes moving faster, processing, analyzing. You finished in 90 minutes? 93 minutes. I would have been faster, but your database has some organizational inefficiencies I had to work around. I made notes about potential improvements, if you're interested. You made notes about my database? It's not criticism, it's observation. The search function would be 40% more efficient if you reorganized the tagging system. I mapped out a proposal. It's in the same email. Alexander was quiet for a long moment. Then he did something I didn't expect. He laughed. Not a big laugh. Just a short exhale that might have been amusement. But on Alexander Mercer, it was like seeing a glacier smile. You're either the most disaster-prone assistant I've ever had or the most efficient. He handed the folders back. Redo the Yoshida summary. Clean up this mess. And Miss Chen? Yes, sir? Blow out the candle when you're working. He returned to his office and closed the door. I stood there, dripping and confused, holding folders and trying to process what just happened. Patricia reappeared with maintenance. You're still here? I think so. He didn't fire you? He laughed. I think. Maybe it was a seizure. Do we have workplace medical protocols for? He laughed. Patricia's eyes went wide. Alexander Mercer laughed? It was very small. Barely noticeable. Possibly imaginary. Patricia looked at me like I'd just performed a miracle. No one makes him laugh. No one. What did you do? Set his contracts on fire and insulted his candles? That's not how this works. You should be fired. You should be escorted out by security. You should be useful, I said quietly. I need to be useful. I spent the next hour cleaning, redoing the Yoshida summary, and delivering Alexander's coffee at exactly 11:30 a.m. ceramic cup, 180 degrees, not a moment early or late. He took it without looking up from his computer. The database proposal. It's good. Implement it. Sir? You broke it, you fix it. I'm giving you system access. Reorganize the tagging structure. I want it functional by tomorrow morning. That's a lot of work for one night. Then I suggest you start now instead of standing in my doorway looking terrified. I turned to leave, then stopped. Mr. Mercer? Yes, Miss Chen? Why didn't you fire me? He finally looked up. Those silver eyes held something I couldn't name. Because everyone else who's worked for me has been perfect. Flawless execution, zero mistakes, absolute precision. And every single one of them lasted less than a week because perfection is brittle. It shatters under pressure. He returned to his screen. You set things on fire and somehow still finish ahead of schedule. That's not perfection. That's resilience. Let's see how long it lasts. I left before I could do something stupid like cry or thank him or set something else on fire. That night, I worked until 3 a.m. reorganizing his database. And when I sent the completion email at 3:47 a.m., I added one line at the end: "Thanks for giving chaos a chance." I didn't expect a response. Alexander Mercer didn't do personal. Didn't do gratitude. Didn't do anything that suggested he was human. But at 4:15 a.m., my phone buzzed. "Get some sleep, Miss Chen. You're useless to me." Exhausted. And somehow, impossibly, that felt like the kindest thing anyone had said to me in years. Chapter 3, Breaking the Pattern. 3 weeks into working for Alexander Mercer, I realized something crucial. He didn't just demand perfection because he was cruel. He demanded it because he was terrified of vulnerability. I figured this out during a late-night filing session, because of course Alexander had physical files that needed organizing at 9 p.m. on a Friday, when I found a folder marked "Personal, Do Not File." I should have left it alone. Should have respected boundaries. But my organizational brain saw "Do Not File" and immediately thought, "Needs better categorization." Inside were newspaper clippings. All about the same event: Mercer Industries scandal, CEO's son implicated in fraud allegations. Alexander Mercer exonerated, family company destroyed. From empire to ashes, the Mercer family fall. The articles were from 8 years ago. Alexander would have been 25, fresh out of business school, watching his family's century-old company collapse because his father had committed fraud and tried to frame him for it. "That file is marked "Do Not File" for a reason, Miss Chen." I jumped, nearly dropping the folder. Alexander stood in the doorway, his expression carved from ice. "I'm sorry. I was organizing and I saw, you saw something marked personal and decided your curiosity was more important than boundaries?" "No, I stopped. Truth was always better than excuses." "Yes. I was curious. I'm sorry. It won't happen again." He crossed the office, took the folder from my hands. For a moment, we stood close enough that I could see the exhaustion in his eyes, the weight he carried. "My father built Mercer Industries over 40 years, he said quietly. Built it on lies and fraud and other people's money. When it came down, it took everything: family reputation, generational wealth, trust. The only reason I wasn't prosecuted was because I had proof I'd tried to stop him. Proof he'd deliberately falsified documents in my name." "That's why you're so precise," I said, understanding clicking into place. "Why you need everything perfect, documented, controlled. You're protecting yourself." His jaw tightened. "I'm protecting my company." "There's a difference." "Is there?" "Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you're so afraid of making your father's mistakes that you've eliminated any room for human error. Including your own." "Human error destroyed my family." "No. Your father's choices destroyed your family. Human error is what I did with the candle, unintentional, fixable, part of being alive." I held his gaze. "You're not your father, Mr. Mercer. And demanding impossible perfection from everyone around you won't change what he did." The words hung between us. I'd crossed a line. Multiple lines. This was where I'd get fired for sure. Instead, Alexander set the folder down and did something shocking. He sat down. Just sat in one of my filing chairs like the weight had become too much. "I rebuilt this company from nothing," he said. "Took 8 years, every dollar I could borrow, every connection I had left. Mercer and Klein exists because I refused to accept failure. Because I made 0 mistakes. That must be exhausting." He looked at me then, really looked at me, and I saw past the ice to the man underneath. Tired. Lonely. Carrying impossible standards because the alternative was admitting he was human. "It is," he admitted. "But it's safer than the alternative." I sat down across from him. "You know what my mother said at my graduation? She said I was a failure because I wasn't summa cum laude from Harvard with a Goldman Sachs offer." I was magna cum laude from Columbia with a junior analyst position and student debt. That's cruel. It was honest, from her perspective. I'd measured myself against impossible standards and fallen short. I smiled sadly. Took me a year to realize those were her standards, not mine. That I got to define what success meant. And what does it mean? It means I'm still here. Still surviving. Still proving that messy, imperfect resilience beats brittle perfection every time. Alexander was quiet for a long moment. Then, you're the first assistant who's lasted more than 3 weeks. I know. You set my contracts on fire. I'm aware. You reorganized my database without asking permission. In my defense, it needed reorganizing. You're insubordinate, chaotic, and have the spatial awareness of a concussed pigeon. Wow. Tell me how you really feel. Despite himself, he smiled. Small, but real. You're also the most efficient assistant I've ever had. The most honest. And the only person who's ever called me out without fear. Should I be afraid? Probably. But his tone said otherwise. Miss Chen, Abigail, I need you to understand something. I don't do personal. I don't do friendship. I don't do anything that creates vulnerabilities. If you keep working for me, it's professional. Distant. Controlled. Understood, Mr. Mercer. Alexander. I blinked. What? If you're going to reorganize my life and psychoanalyze me after hours, you should probably call me Alexander. That feels too personal for someone who doesn't do personal. Consider it an exception to the rule. We sat there in comfortable silence, two people who'd been broken by impossible standards, finding unexpected understanding in a late-night office. Abigail? Alexander said finally. Yes? Thank you. For not being perfect. Thank you for not firing me for it.